Farming life is great, yeah. But the grass is always greener. Is it really green on the farm?
Because right now, I don't follow any guru, any practice, anything. I follow nature. Because I think it is the longest lasting, self regulated, self sufficient system in the world. No one waters a forest, no one weeds a forest, no one puts pesticide on a forest, and the forest lives through millennia. So I would not recommend people go and buy their own piece of land unless they are fully, deeply, positively committed. Ki I'm not going to clear this plot, level it out with a JCB and put a swimming pool and a bungalow there. Like, that's the last thing you should do. People in a loincloth are happier than millionaires. And millionaires who are not attached to their wealth continue to remain happy.
You were in a city like Mumbai,
I was in a city like Mumbai.
high-paced life,
Extremely.
and now you're going back to Mahabaleshwar, and it's not the touristy Mahabaleshwar that we know of. You're off Mahabaleshwar in some place.
10 kilometers away. The
Is
forest.
it in the middle of a village?
Yeah.
How many people are surrounding you there? 10, 15?
Yeah, nice. You find soil, you plant something, and you grow and you eat. The flavor, the joy, the satisfaction, the rebellion, the mindset is extremely empowering. I don't want to get into this quantum mechanics thing and all, but even a Wi-Fi connection at home is disrupting some vibration within you. When you switch it off, your well-being immediately increases. The same companies that made bombs during World War II are the companies making NPK post-war era. Right? So
You can make a bomb with a fertilizer.
you can make
if you
bomb
know.
with nitrogen fertilizers, man. This is controversial. Huh? Permaculturists are going to lash back on this. So I'm sorry, guys. I mean, if you have some other view of permaculture.
Welcome to a brand new episode of 42 Talks, where we try and get you an answer to everything. As we live a fast-paced lives in our cities, trying to get the corporate gig going, there are people like Swapnil, who is today's guest, who are trying to live the farm life. Now, Swapnil trained as an engineer, has an MBA, is an industrial designer, has dabbled in media, has been a startup entrepreneur as well, and then slowly the essence of life dawned on him, wherein he decided to take the plunge in the farm life. He and his wife, noted actress Mrunmayee Deshpande, both of them relocated to their farm, the Neil and Momo farms, near Mahabaleshwar. They have been practicing permaculture and they have been growing their own produce for their own consumption as of now. Swapnil imagines a world where the world has adopted a more greener way of life, is self-sufficient as a community, and is contributing towards a more peaceful way of living. Join us today as we learn more about permaculture and a more natural way of living in today's episode of 42 Talks. Please welcome Swapnil Rao of Neil and Momo Farms. Welcome to today's episode of 42 Talks.
Thank you.
Swapnil, very glad to have you on this podcast. But let's start with what you're doing right now. If you tell us, your big project right now is Neil and Momo Farms. And everybody aspires to be a farmer, a city sleeker, burning 9 to 9 oil in a corporate job, dreams. Farming life is great, yeah. But the grass is always greener. Is it really green on the farm?
Yeah, so I always say the grass is always green on my side.
Super.
So I've always been an eternal optimist.
Okay.
And that's a very accurate description of what I do. And I like this freewheeling format, especially because, yes, both of us have, in a sense, followed our curiosities always in life without any inhibition. And by the grace of the universe, we have survived to tell the tale, right? We didn't kill ourselves. So right now, Neil and Momo Farms is all about a hope that we will be able to steer at least a section of the masses to contract this mad acceleration towards our own doom that I'm completely convinced of, while allowing them to seek pleasure, right? So everyone thinks that farm life is not easy, but it's in sync with the cycles of nature. Okay. it seems the right amount of ebb and flow. It seems to have the right amount of pressure and relaxation. And it just seems like the whole thing allows you to stay fit mentally, physically, spiritually. At the same time, be productive to the world, so to speak. Right? So, a big part of Neil and Momo right now is how do we live our lives the right way while minimizing our carbon footprint. We can't remove it, but we can minimize it. And at the same time, live a deeply fulfilled life full of pleasures. So I love the good things. I love good shoes. I love knives. I love good food. I love experiences. And I live all of these things while being on a farm. So, and we make like sustainable products, personal care, home care, all these kinds of things. So basically, it's been an evolution, man. And what happened 7 years ago is I decided that I'm going to go to the mother library of all knowledge, which is nature. And I stopped reading all kinds of textbooks. Because 7 years ago, if we would have had this conversation, I would probably have thrown like 40 design terms on you. This analysis, pastel analysis, Darfur, and all these different terms. And we would have come to a design that was extremely inefficient. I was a huge minimalist. That has changed in my life. So many transformational changes. But at this point in time, I'm exploring this life. I wouldn't say I'm there yet, right? There are so many questions. I'm still figuring out a process. But permaculture has laid down some basic framework that seems to be working right now. And I haven't been able to poke holes in it.
But let's rewind back, okay? Because you've been a Mumbai boy all your life, right?
Yeah.
And then you've had stints outside.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to take the Mumbaiker out of you.
Yeah.
So settling on a farm, big adaptation change.
Huge. Yeah.
What were the struggles?
Wow. So in permaculture, we call these invisible structures, right? So there are things that are visible to you.
Acha, sorry. We are going to use the permaculture many times. Many of us really don't know what is permaculture. So maybe I pause you here and say, what's permaculture?
What is
Let's
permaculture?
define that. A lot of people think it's organic farming. That's not what it is.
It's not. It's a way of life.
Yes.
And it's a set of... So it's actually the most purest distillation of a design framework that I have ever come across.
Okay.
And it is basically led by some attitudinal principles and some design-led principles. Attitudinal principles are you not just have the anthropogenic perspective, that is the human perspective, not just the economic perspective, but you also have the ecological perspective. So if you visualize this like a Venn diagram, there is the human perspective, the economic perspective, then the ecological perspective.
Okay.
And at the intersection of these three circles at the center point is where permaculture is.
Okay.
So every decision in your life must have these three perspectives. Okay. So this is the attitudinal principles. And then there are design principles, like 12 design principles. These are very effective in taking every single life decision. Be it how I make my furniture, how I grow my food, how I build my house. It all sort of, and it comes from observing nature. So it's a form of biomimicry along with these three attitudinal principles. This is permaculture. How it's popularly defined is creating productive and sustainable habitats for all life.
Okay.
So when you say habitat, it's a home, right? For all life, with the human at the center.
Yes.
As the designer.
Right.
So that is permaculture.
And I'm going to stretch this point a little further to ask you. I know you are a big champion of permaculture, but let me put on the devil's hat in between.
Let's
so when
go
you
for
see
it.
my horns growing, you know I'm challenging you on your thought process.
Let's go, man.
Do you think this is an elitist concept? Or do you think it is for everybody? Because what happens a lot of times when I say I want to be a farmer, and people have seen us do corporate stuff all our life or talk really capitalistic ideas all our lives, and then we say we want to be farmer. They project that idea on our persona that they have in their mind,
तो
right?
अमीरों का खेल है मतलब.
Right.
हाँ.
So you can be. It's if you've seen this very popular. There's an interview where Shah Rukh Khan is. Somebody's narrating what Shah Rukh Khan said, that you can be a great philosopher, but first make money.
Yeah.
You've seen that?
Yeah.
So is
Absolutely.
permaculture an elitist idea, or why? If it is not, how is it for everyone? Because we are saying habitats, and the moment that word clicks in my mind, we say that, oh, everything that we are doing in the city is not permaculture then.
100%.
Yes?
I think it's such a beautiful question because all of these 12 design principles were distilled by observing indigenous people who had no exposure to capitalism. Okay? So, in the root of permaculture is a lost tribe living in the Amazon somewhere. So, if they can do it, then why can't a middle class person do it? Now, there's a deep attack on the notions of security and am I safe? How much money is enough? All these kinds of sort of internal transforming questions then come up. And they have to be questioned. But you don't have to be rich to practice permaculture. Number one, there is something called as zones, the concept of zones in permaculture. And zone 0 is within you. Okay? So permaculture begins within you first. So you have to question your worldview. Okay? And you do a fundamental needs analysis. Okay? And you say, what do I need? Right? And I'm not talking about Maslow's hierarchy and all that. I'm talking about basic, what do you and me need, Pushkar, to survive? Okay? Apne ko khana chahiye. We need some shelter because we are an extremely weak, vulnerable animal. Right. If we are put in the wild, khatam. Right. 2-3 nights and game over, right? And we need kapda to protect ourselves from the elements. So these are the 3 fundamentals. Beyond this, we need community. Okay, just to engage in the sense of self. These are my observations also. Okay. But beyond this, everything else is subjective. Everything else. How many shirts are enough shirts for you? How many shoes are enough shoes for you?
Almost directing me towards the path of nirvana now.
I mean, I'm pushing you in the path of well-being, I would say.
All sense, like, don't all philosophical thoughts say that detach yourself from the materialistic world and you will find yourself?
That's because there is merit in it.
Yes.
There is merit in it.
Yes.
People in a loincloth are happier than millionaires. And millionaires who are not attached to their wealth continue to remain happy.
Okay, we'll get back to permaculture.
Let's get back to
go
permaculture.
Somewhere else otherwise.
Yeah. So basically, permaculture definitely is not for the elite. However, I think all elite must be permaculturists. Okay. Because if you have the means and if you have the resource and if you have a piece of land. So when I say elite, if you own a piece of land in today's day, you are bloody rich, man. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter if you're whatever, like big industrialist or whatever. But if you own a piece of land and you work as a Swiggy delivery boy in the city, but you have 10 acres back home, just pack your shit up, go back, permaculture is for you. So my first lowest hanging fruit when I teach also is existing landowners. Okay. And what they can do with existing land. Because land use change is the single biggest determinant for carbon emissions in the world today, right? And there are so many scams and all these, stupid things happening around it. But so it's not for the elite. If you have land, you are elite, and therefore you must be a permaculturist. I have something to share with you, is my message.
You were in a city like Mumbai.
I was in a city like Mumbai.
High-paced life.
Extremely.
And now you're going back to Mahabaleshwar, and it's not the touristy Mahabaleshwar that we know of. You're off Mahabaleshwar in some place.
10 kilometers away. In the forest.
Is it in the middle of a village?
Yeah.
How many people are surrounding you there? 10, 15?
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So I live on a beautiful farm. Mahabaleshwar is a evergreen dwarf bole forest. I'm in one of the top 8 most biodiverse hotspots in the world. And there are deer and leopards. Just yesterday morning, there was a barking deer call that leopard movement was on the farm. There are langurs, there are wild boar, civet cats, rabbits, 48 species of birds, including all the major raptors, all reptiles, venomous, non-venomous. So I share this space with them on the farm, and yeah, it was. So it happened actually gradually. So the thinking happened while I was in the city.
Okay.
I read One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka. It messed with my mind big time. And I just, like a respectable, intelligent being, I could not sort of digest the life that I was living, right? And that hypocrisy sort of started eating at me. And whatever I used to do, I was like, हाँ बहुत बड़ा तीर मार रहा है तू इतना बड़ा कंपनी चला के. And I just did a basic, we call it embodied energy calculation in technical terms. But I did an embodied energy calculation of my life. And I was like consuming so much carbon that it became impossible for me to sort of do this. So then I gradually started volunteering on friends' farms.
Okay.
I started reading more books. I did a permaculture design certification course from Goa. I did a natural building course from Nainital. I did a diploma in nature conservation and ecological restoration from Ecological Society, Pune. I read countless books. I'm a voracious reader, so my favorite thing to do. And after doing all this, I created a proper framework of how to make this transition from city to farm. And then I went and bought the land. So there's a lot of, it's like iceberg, like a lot of thinking has gone below the surface, and then I have taken the action.
Can I tell you my story of buying the farm?
Yeah.
So like all aspirational farm owners, despite having a farm at my disposal from our native village, I went and bought a piece of land. Again, same ambitions. Let's grow a forest. It's in your vicinity. It's in Y area. You've been there before.
I've been there, yeah.
A beautiful river at the base of the
gorgeous,
plot and all,
beautiful
right?
place, yeah.
And I thought I've not used. So if I reflect back, it's been 3 or 4 years, and you take the 2 years of COVID and that heavy rainfall year once 2020,
21.
I think.
Yeah.
Barring that, I've not been there as many times as I would have loved to be there. So there's definitely a misplanning of resources or my time, or probably I do not know how to make use of it. The amount of research you did, probably I've not done that. But the 2 nights that I've spent there, we pitched a tent on the New Year's Eve, and me and my brother, we said, let's stay there. We could see 16 lights, electric lights at night, and night comes very fast. 7 o'clock, pitch dark. In fact, before that. And then you kind of, if you're not the talkative types, if you're not the ones who are very active, you suddenly start wondering, what do I do now? And those were painfully long hours, you know. And even during daytime, there's so much little that you can do. Otherwise, you're just sitting on a chair looking out in the distant world. Passing time became my biggest challenge for the 4 days that I stayed there. So that was my adaptation struggle, you could say, adapting to a farm life. And if I imagine staying a week there doing nothing, it's going to be even more painful.
Yeah.
So that's the question when I asked you about adaptation. How do you adapt to slow-paced life?
Yeah.
The city doesn't train you to do that.
Not at all. So that's exactly what I was going to get at. It's a very deep conditioning of the city. So if you sit with a villager, you will observe that within 10 to 15 seconds, you start fiddling with a leaf or a rock or something like that. And your brain starts going in 1,000 different directions. But the villager is just tuned in, He's calm, he is looking into the distance, and he has this sense where time is a very different sort of animal for him, right? And it's a very different animal for us. So it takes a while for the city to get out of you, basically. All this buzzy energy around you is not, I don't want to get into this quantum mechanics thing and all, but even a Wi-Fi connection at home is disrupting some vibration within you. When you switch it off, your well-being immediately increases, right? I'm having this battle with my wife right now to get rid of the Wi-Fi connection, but I haven't succeeded. So we still have Wi-Fi on the farm, and we managed to get it to solve this very sort of conundrum. But there is so much happening in nature. And what would have helped you at night is if you would have lit a fire. So I'll tell you another thing. The most primal feeling a human being can have is to be in a forest which is relatively untouched by humans, next to a fire by himself with his thoughts. There is something remarkably peaceful, and I can't express it. So in our workshops, we do these intro to permaculture workshops. And on day 2, after all the learning, we have a 45-minute silence around fire at night on the farm. And it's a phenomenally transformative experience. And I'll tell you what I want to do eventually. I want to take the group in the middle of the forest. Okay? And while the other batch sleeps, one person will hold guard for 1 hour. And he will be responsible for the pack. Right? That is who we are. That is how our brains are wired lakhs of years ago. And they haven't evolved ever since. We are still the same animals. And somehow this whole life sort of brings you closer to that instinct, which is another thing that excites me about it. I think we will become more human. The value for human life, the value for camaraderie. When I come to the city, when I meet you or my family, I'm so excited to meet everyone. It's genuine happiness. And that comes because there is that space on the farm where I'm missing everyone. You know? So like I said, the right amount of ebb, the right amount of flow, the right amount of push and pull. That's what it's all about.
So allow me to get a little deeper in the process wherein you one fine day say, I become a full-time farmer, right? But before that, you did a lot of your work. I mean, I've been following your Instagram for some time now. And I see that you build a farm in the middle of Powai.
Yeah, in Mumbai.
And that community is probably benefiting from all the vegetables that are growing there. And before you did that, you must have done something with your balcony or terrace,
Absolutely.
right? So tell us the smaller steps, because what I want to kind of get out is, and that's the mistake that I've been doing, is we always go and do something big and it doesn't work. But when I look at your journey, these smaller steps, I can see them building towards the larger farm.
Absolutely.
So tell us how you started. What was the first thing you did? And often what happens is success breeds success, right? So it must have been successes all along those, along with all the failures where you saw success as well.
What a loaded question. So too many things in that question itself. I think let's start backwards. Success breeds success. So you should always play to succeed. I think failure is glamorized too much in today's world, especially in the startup world, right? Don't play to lose, play to win. If you play to win and lose on the way, it's okay. But you have to play to win it, okay? So that's the first attitude. Second attitude is when you're at home, there are 5 decisions you can take immediately. It's famously known as the 5 R's.
Okay.
At the sake of repetition, you will find this on the internet everywhere. But the first thing you do is refuse, okay? Refuse what you don't need, okay? You're on Amazon, impulse, some ad is pushing at you this fancy new earphone that has 3 times more noise cancelling than your existing AirPods. Just refuse the impulse to buy it, okay? Reduce your consumption. First refuse, then reduce, then reuse, okay? And at the end, you recycle, okay? These are the things you can do sitting at home.
Right.
You don't even have to move.
Right.
Continue living your life and just do this. From there, I went zero plastic. I'm still on the journey, but I went zero plastic. Okay. So conscious consumption. I'm buying my shoes from an artisan in Mussoorie who is 5th generation cobbler, who takes the shape of your foot and customizes the shoe for you that lasts with aggressive use on the farm. It's been 9 years now and nothing has happened to it. This is a cobbler in Mussoorie. right? So buy one shoe, buy a great shoe, buy a custom fit shoe that you will enjoy and it's extremely comfortable. These are the things you do at home. Then you start growing coriander and methi at home. Okay, the simplest thing to do. You take some seeds from the market, take dhania from the market, crush it in the between your palms and sow it. And the first harvest of coriander that you get is going to be super gratifying. You compost your kitchen waste, segregate your waste, compost your kitchen waste. Within 2 months, if you use the right microbial culture, it's widely available. So many beautiful composting solutions out there. Famous one is Daily Dump. We can shout out to them or whatever. I mean, so many others are there. So you take a nice composter, home composter, compost your kitchen waste, put it in a kundi, put some seeds, boom, you're growing your own food at home. Find a sunny spot in a window. Next you conquer is your terrace, building terrace. Go fight with your building secretary because he's not going to allow you to do it. Put some MS stands.
I can see all the patterns you have had at home and your society.
No, man, this is the story of every society in every city.
Right.
Somehow the secretary thinks, he can stop people from doing what they want. But anyway, so you go fight with whoever you have to fight and take control of your terrace. It has enough sunshine. Put some grow bags there and start growing food that will feed. Chalo, you don't want to eat it, your watchman will eat it, yeah, whatever. But I mean, start growing food on your terrace. Then you go to your common garden in your society. Every society has some space growing.
Manicured lawn.
Some nice shapes of animals happening on some foreign species of plants.
Yeah.
Just get rid of all that rubbish, put some beautiful compost there, start growing food there. I think in the city, we need to start reclaiming the common space, right? Wild purslane grows all over the city. Wood sorrel grows all over the city. These are sabzis. You can eat them. If you're sitting at a CCD or a Starbucks and you see some shrubs growing, take a picture of it. Google, is it edible or not? If it's edible, try eating it. These are acts of radical revolution where you're pushing back on the system, telling the system, listen, I'm not going to eat what you feed me. I'm going to sort of reclaim my basics.
It's very funny that you mentioned. I'm sorry, I have to tell you this story because this is. So you mentioned about finding a shrub at a Starbucks or a CCD. The very building that we are sitting in, I don't know, but probably we have some indisciplined tenants in this building who might have thrown a bunch of tomatoes outside their windows sometimes. I'm walking up the stairs every day, and in our duct of this building, one fine day I see a plant with red cherry tomatoes on it. And I'm like, where are these cherry tomatoes growing on a drainage pipeline, drainage pipeline. So it's probably getting compost. I don't know what it's getting, but good nutrients, bright red cherry tomatoes. They were unreachable, but I would have loved to get hand on them,
So I'm telling you, you don't have to go get a farm, right? You don't have to do something so radical. You find soil, you plant something and you grow and you eat. The flavor, the joy, the satisfaction, the rebellion, the mindset is extremely empowering, right? Go on the fringes. I'm not saying like convert cities to farmlands, but use this real estate because ultimately we are sequestering carbon, right? We trap carbon dioxide and we create sugar, which is used by us. So it's somehow reclaiming the space that we have so carelessly, without permission, destroyed. So you do that, and then slowly, as your sort of confidence increases, you go on the outskirts. There are these contract farms. This is a new concept that is coming up. So you can actually pay someone monthly fees, and they will take like 500 square foot of farmland for you. They'll grow whatever you will consume on it. So start contributing to such initiatives. People are doing stuff around the city. Do this. After you have done this, participate in plantation drives, go on treks, spend time with nature. After you've done all this, if you still feel that you want to go deeper, I felt so, then you go and volunteer on farms. take a month's break. If you can work remotely, if you're in the tech industry, figure out a place where there is Wi-Fi, go stay on a farm, work on a farm. Typically, an average office day can be wrapped up in 4 to 5 hours if you do concentrated work. Work for 4 hours, rest of the time work on the farm, eat off the farm, live that life. And then hopefully you can go and rent a farm, and then hopefully you should go and buy a farm. But I will not recommend you buying a farm because, again,
Not for everyone.
not for everyone, and it's land use change, man. Tomorrow, if you buy a farm and you change your mind and you clear the plot and you build a bungalow, you will be ruining it all. So I don't trust people to be as committed as they start off with, right?
Okay.
So I would not recommend people go and buy their own piece of land unless they are fully, deeply, positively committed.
Okay.
I'm not going to clear this plot, level it out with a JCB and put a swimming pool and a bungalow there. Like, that's the last thing you should do.
Now, Japanese actually have a word for forest bathing. I'm not able.
Shirin Okyu.
Yeah.
Forest bathing.
Yeah. So I don't know the word today.
That's the word, yeah.
So if these cultures have thought about words, it must have come from a lot of thinking about activities that you are supposed to do. And forest bathing definitely there's a lot of study about hormonal secretions, mental wavelength changes and things like that with forest bathing. So I'm not surprised if a lot more study needs to go over there to bring modern day evidences. Or we believe it's bringing genuine happiness when I do those things and continue to do that. Then we don't need evidence. I think that's much more powerful.
Exactly. I think this aggression of science sometimes is a little overburdening, I feel. Like, do we have to have a research paper to believe everything?
Exactly.
Do there have to be clinical trials for you to believe something that is so obvious? So I'll tell you, like, I don't have the data on it, but subconsciously, every one of us who are on the farm, we take our shoes off before we enter our vegetable beds. Even Mama, Ganpat Da, who is a village elder who farms with me, without even telling, it's like entering a house. He enters the farm, takes his shoes off and goes into the veggie bed and starts tending to the plants. We subconsciously take our shoes off and walk into a temple. There must be something, and I am left with a profound sense of well-being after a hard day on the farm.
How many years now you have been on the farm that
Full
you're talking
time,
about?
3 years.
Okay, so that's a substantial period. It's not like
Full time. I sold the house in Bombay and I shifted to the farm.
Right. So 3 years is a good amount of time. It's not like you did it for 3 months and now I'm like, let's talk about farming.
No, I lived there. I lived on and off because I was building my own house.
Yes.
So I had a rental house near the farm.
Yes.
And I lived like that for 2 years, but I was on the farm only.
Yes.
But for 3 years, I am on the Vastu. I'm on my farm.
Right.
I wake up there.
Right.
And I do something.
So Swapnil, I want to change the theme of our conversation for a little bit. Let's get a little technical.
Let's go.
So permaculture. The word itself is fairly new to the Indian context, if you ask me, but very, very rooted in our traditional practices.
Yes.
If I look at it, nothing new conceptually in that sense.
Right.
Because when I look at my old native farm at my village, principles I can see bits in this. If at all we have been corrupted by modern practices.
Yes.
There are a lot of vocabulary around those things. So organic is a big buzzword. Permaculture. Then a lot of people will talk about
biodynamic.
What is the Japanese way of growing a forest?
Miyawaki.
The Miyawaki way of doing afforestation.
Syntropic.
Yeah. Then a lot of people will say, so there's a big movement in Maharashtra at least called Shashwat Sheti, pioneered by Dr. Palekar. Many people have done different experiments. They may be overlapping philosophically, conceptually, but they are their own techniques in their own rights. You allude very closely to permaculture. How is it different from all of these things? Why is it not called organic farming, what you do? Because you're doing natural farming, right?
Yeah, so I'll get into the technical nitty-gritties of it. But before that, as a disclaimer, I don't call it permaculture also. I don't call it anything.
Okay.
I just call it Uh, Farming with nature's logic.
Okay.
I'd just like to keep it like that.
Super.
Because right now I don't follow any guru, any practice, anything. I follow nature.
Okay.
Because I think it is the longest lasting self regulated, self sufficient system in the world. Right? No one waters a forest, no one weeds a forest, no one puts pesticide on a forest, and the forest lives through millennia. So I just observe that and I mimic things in it. And we'll get into the technical bits of that also. Permaculture was founded by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren somewhere in the 80s. And they learned from indigenous people. And permaculture is a human centered design approach to natural farming.
Well put.
So permaculture says that, listen, human is at the center. Okay, so if human wants, this is controversial. Huh? Permaculturists are going to lash back on this. So I'm sorry, guys. I mean, if you have some other view of permaculture, so every permaculturist will define it in a different
Okay,
way.
let's settle on this. These are all opinions.
Oh, these are all my opinions, and I'm very sorry if I have not fully grasped your
I think
concept
there's no
of.
reason to be sorry at all. I think you're interpreting.
It's my interpretation of it,
Very
okay?
well
And
said.
I'm living this life, so this is how I see it as. It's the human-centered design approach to
I love
permaculture.
that definition. Human-centered design approach to natural living.
To natural living. That is what permaculture is. So if I like New Zealand apples and if I can figure out a way to grow them in Mahabaleshwar, permaculture allows me to do that.
Okay.
If I know that a species is invasive but I can control it as a human being, permaculture allows me to do that.
Okay.
I do not do it. This is my principle over permaculture. Okay, but permaculture simply says that as long as all the needs of the human are fulfilled and not coming at the cost of ecology, it's okay to do that, and you must do it that way.
So you're putting the human slightly above.
हाँ, थोड़ा सा. मतलब Masanobu Fukuoka with natural farming openly has said on record that tomorrow if a leopard in my jungle that I have created, if a leopard comes and eats me, I'll be the happiest person on earth because I've completed the life cycle and I've put myself to some use. But a permaculture would put some kind of an animal trap to prevent the leopard from coming into the property. That's the difference. If I'm sort of making myself clear. And permaculture started as permanent agriculture. Okay, the combination of these two words, but then it evolved into permanent culture. So agricultureचं culture झालं. And I love Masanobu Fukuoka's definition of agriculture. It's not the cultivation of crops, it's the cultivation of human beings. It's such a profound difference in how you view the act of growing food, because that's essentially how we cultivate human beings. If no one's cultivating your food for you, boss, it's game over. Like you can't survive without food, right? So that's permaculture, natural living. What is the other thing you said? Miyawaki forest. Miyawaki forests are an extremely accelerated way of creating ground cover, but it does not necessarily have the human in the heart of it. So if I have such a dense forest and I have no place to go and harvest that apple, then what am I doing? Right? So it is a way of reforesting the planet really quickly, but it has so much input cost laid into it.
Okay.
You need to put lots of manure, the ground has to be a certain way, aggressive watering, aggressive maintenance for the first 3 years. Only then the forest happens.
And then it's a sustainable.
And then
after
it
that?
goes into a sustainable thing.
Okay.
But eventually it doesn't mature into a proper ecology simply because it's too dense.
Okay.
Like for me, every time all these Israeli techniques, high density plantations and all this, I'm extremely against. See, because you have to look at, they are in a desert. You are in a tropical climate with beautiful seasons around you. Why are you doing high density? The plant is suffering. Okay. So anyway, we can get into that. But basically, what all these different techniques are some shades or some expressions of the same fundamental law of how life grows in nature.
Okay.
So when the moon directly affects water, on earth. Water affects growth rate of seeds. Therefore, if you plant seeds with the lunar cycle, which is Tithi based farming, you are coming to the traditional farming technique.
Right.
Makes sense? Why not? So, what I say is rather than getting into the technicalities of anything, you take whatever is sort of making sense to you while understanding the natural environment around you. So, unfortunately, the answer to everything is it depends.
Okay. So are you watering your plants through flood irrigation or through drip irrigation? Are you even watering? Because some techniques say you don't need to
not
water
water.
and things
Exactly.
like that. So I'm trying to understand what are you doing on
Excellent
your farm?
question. So the answer to it is it depends.
Okay.
After listening to this podcast, if someone stops watering their plants, it will be a mistake.
Right.
Okay. So let me give context. Okay. I am at 3,700 feet above sea level. I am in a 6,000 mm per year super high rainfall region where there's extreme high erosion. Okay.
And this is purely water erosion.
This is purely water erosion. The sheer force of the monsoon and how it feeds the 5 rivers that go down into the coast, there's hardly anything that's left on top.
Correct.
And because people have already deforested the place, without trees, the soil has no chance of sort of holding itself and it's just flowing away. Okay. So one permaculture principle is catch and store energy and slow down water on your farm. I have to do exactly the opposite thing. I have to make ways for water to pass without destroying my farm. Okay. While at the same time trapping as much water in the ground as possible. So I plant trees. I have to keep them alive through the summer through drip irrigation. But in monsoon, I have a completely different strategy for water management. I came to this point because I observed and paid attention to where my farm is, what my neighboring forests are, what the ecology is, what my native flora and fauna is, what my soil type is. There are so many variable factors to consider before you take any kind of decision on the farm. So even when I used to consult, this was a hard pill to swallow for a lot of clients, but I used to tell them 1 year, you don't touch your piece.
Okay.
You just let it be.
Right.
And we observe it through the 3 seasons of India. Because in India, you have your land, you know how different it looks in the summer, how different it looks in the winter, how different it looks in the monsoon.
Absolutely.
Right? There, I mean, if you take a picture, you won't even be able to tell that it's the same piece of land.
Absolutely.
The floral diversity, the faunal diversity, the soil type, everything changes through the 3 seasons. Without understanding how this land performs in all 3 seasons, how the water flows through it, how the wind comes, what is the sun path around it, what is the soil biodiversity, how can you plant even a single sapling? Even to put a footing for your house, where to put a jhopda, where to pitch a tent, you need to observe it for a year. Maybe where you pitched a tent in the winter is a horrible place to pitch in the monsoon. Because there's a whole water channel going through it and it's extremely unsafe.
Very right.
But the idea is to come to a point of complete self-sufficiency.
Okay.
And from there, my hypothesis is I can create so much abundance just by using the technology of natural farming that I don't have to move a finger. Like I just sow the seed. Ultimately, that's all a human should do. This is my philosophy.
You're doing this at your capacity right now, but sometimes it's often a prescription, like a silver bullet to solve world problems, right? So at one point in time, our country was deficient in food grains, and then the green revolution is what we learn in our history geography books. And some states became extremely prosperous because of green revolution, but they probably are also suffering today because it has done so much damage to the soil and all that's a question mark. A very contradictory situation may come from a country like Sri Lanka, wherein it had an economic collapse. And one of the factors that they said, of course, it was a lot of mismanagement there, but one of the factors that got highlighted, if not the real factor, was that there was a diktat to go organic farming, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about a country like India, or we can talk like a typical farmer in rural Maharashtra. we have a lot of farmer deaths, so it becomes important to see whether we can prescribe this form of farming to them or not. We have to feed a huge population, so we have to be self-sufficient. So will a farming technique like this allow us to create and fill silos of food grains that we need to fill? That is question number one. Secondly, will it come at a cost that is equivalent to what modernized farming prescribes that it is the silver bullet today? And third thing is, how does it all tap into the ecosystem of farm produce to the table that exists today? Because it may or may not subscribe to that model. Do you have answers for these? Have you thought
I
about
have
this?
answers for all of them. What a loaded question. Okay, so let's get at it one by one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes.
Okay.
There is hard data that using the natural technique of farming, you can grow 1,300 kgs of rice per quarter acre.
And people are doing this somewhere in the
People
world?
are doing this in Japan. Masanobu Fukuoka's farm still produces it. There's Save's farm in Gujarat that still produces it. Okay. Not even organic, no khat, not even shen khat, not even manure. Just the straw of the earlier produce sprayed over the current produce. Just that cycle of nature replenishes soil and soil biodiversity in such a way that yield goes on increasing up till a point that it reaches its natural maximum. Okay. Secondly, I think the biggest problem in the world today is not food production, it is the distribution and access of food. Okay, so that is a completely different problem to solve. That can also get solved. That will get solved when you don't want to have apples from New Zealand. That somewhere human greed and stupidity has to be checked. Okay, but if you check that from a pure nutritional standpoint, this problem can be solved. Natural farming can absolutely and 100% generate, if not more, equal amount of food that chemical farming can. Number one. Number two, while Punjab became prosperous, it is the cancer capital of the world. So not just the soils got ruined, but the humans got ruined. Okay. The farther you go away from a natural process of farming, the more destructive cycles you create for yourself. And you start creating downstream problems rather than solving the upstream problem. Okay? What I would say is that why a farmer commits suicide. Let's look at it in a step-by-step process. Right. Okay? Let's get into how your food is grown today. The land has been tilled. It is devoid of any vegetation. Naturally, when sunlight and water fall on it, all kinds of soil plants start popping up. These are termed as weeds by us humans. They are not weeds according to nature. They are plants installed by nature to solve deficiencies in that particular soil. Okay? But for us, we want some kind of corn there, we want some kind of rice there. That is why that is weed. Okay, so we spray herbicide, glyphosate, which is officially, as per studies, directly linked to cancer. Okay, we spray herbicide and we kill all the weeds. This is modern farming, by the way. Yes. Then a big, huge tractor, which is run by fossil fuels, which is diesel and petrol, comes and plows your entire soil. Okay, this soil apparently loosens the texture of the soil, but what it actually does, it makes finer particles of the soil, and when the tire goes over it and the water gets into it, it compacts the soil, and the soil gets harder and harder and harder year after year after year. Therefore, you have to till harder and harder year after year after year. The herbicide has killed all soil life. The tractor has made the soil rock hard. Okay, now you go and put seed into it. Okay, what is this seed? This seed has now been controlled by most of the private companies in the world. Correct. Monsanto holds patents to most native strains. Right. Vandana Shiva just won a huge lawsuit 2 years ago against Khapli Gahu, Khapli wheat. Monsanto
the
had
traditional wheat that is
traditional wheat. The government of United States had issued a patent to Monsanto, giving them complete authority of Khapli. because it has low glycemic index
Correct.
and it doesn't trigger insulin. It is a wheat that diabetes patients can freely eat. And Monsanto very smartly changed 2 genes in it and applied for a patent, and they got awarded it. Vandana Shiva came up with a consortium of people and she fought this lawsuit and she won. But the struggle is real on ground. These pharma companies and seed companies have 5 men roaming every little village that you can imagine, collecting the native seed from the farmer and giving them their seed. Okay? Their seed has a tweaked gene.
Yes.
Which does not create a true copy of it in the next generation
You
after
can't
it is
plant
sown.
that for the next season of farming.
If you plant, you will get some other plant only.
Okay.
It will come, but it won't have the same properties
So
of
you
this.
can't harvest it basically.
So the natural bounty,
Right.
nature telling you ki boss, on one stalk of rice I am giving you whatever, like 2000 grains, and you can eat 5, you can save 10, and you can plant them the next
Absolutely.
year to create more and more. So 1:200, chalo. 1:200 is this abundant scale of nature. Okay, every stalk of rice gives you an opportunity to have 200 new stalks of rice.
Correct.
Take what you want and plant for the rest. Right? We destroy this cycle, we break it, we tweak a gene, we put a patent, and now you have to buy it from us.
Yeah.
Devious, no? So now you've put this, okay? The problem is it's tastier rice, hypothetically, but it's very nazuk, it's very delicate. So it needs to be protected. Who is going to protect it? All these pesticide
Pesticides.
schedules are going to protect it. These are the guys selling you the pesticide. So along with the seed, there is a full schedule, a fertilization and pesticide schedule.
Correct.
By the way, fertilizers, ammonium nitrates are basically the same companies that made bombs during World War II are the companies making NPK post-war era. Right? So
You can make a bomb with a fertilizer.
you can make
if
bomb
you know.
with nitrogen fertilizers, man.
Okay, let's not give people ideas here.
Like diammonium phosphate is like raw material, man. And urea is, you can make bombs with it.
Yeah.
So you take this and the farmer sprays ruthless quantities of it because the government has subsidized it. So like $10 a kg or some peanuts price, you gunny sacks where a handful is needed. People just spray it because or khat dalenge. It's like if I give you 5 plates of biryani, you will become healthier. That's the hypothesis, not sick. So they push this and they'll sow your seed. They will flood irrigate. So if 1 liter water is needed per plant, 10 liters of water is given, 9 liters is wasted and 1 liter is taken up by the plant. By the way, plant is a natural living thing, right? So it's going to consume all it wants and it's going to leave everything else, which then leaches through the soil, goes into our rivers, causes eutrophication, algal blooms, destruction of ecosystems. There's a destruction of ecosystems down the line.
Right.
All this while making extremely weak rice. Okay? And this rice gives you whatever, a decent harvest of 700, 800 kgs per acre. And I'm saying you can do 2,500 to 3,000 kgs per acre with natural farming. Coming to your Sri Lanka point, okay? So by the way, this is the ghastly way food is produced now.
There are enough people talking about this. There are enough lawsuits going out.
But we should be scared, because mostly this is how our food is coming from. And now the scary part, Pushkar, is the food is being radiated using gamma radiations
for shelf life.
So that and this is the technological progress of BARC, and they show it in tours. I had gone for a demo tour for the Dhruva reactor in BARC, and they very proudly say we radiate all 70% of the food that is consumed in India, especially pulses.
That's true with mangoes as well. That's true with potatoes as well, because then potatoes will not have sprouts, and mangoes need to be radiated with gammas, otherwise you can't export them.
Boss, this is crazy. Can you see the stupidity and the futility of this? I mean, it scares the hell out of me, man. If whatever you're eating doesn't rot, you have to realize it doesn't break the hell down in your body also. It's going to go through your gut, and your gut's going to be like, "Ye, who is this guy? Like,
You seen
what
this
is
famous burger thing that they kept this
Oh,
burger?
the Reckitt Burbank potato thing. Yeah, it
Yeah.
just didn't decompose, right?
Yeah,
The McDonald's burger.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
So you're on Sri Lanka before we started
yeah,
getting
yeah.
into
So
this.
I'm just
Yeah.
coming to your question point by point by
Right.
point, right? Um, so this is scary, and it needs to change. There is no doubt about it. If we go down this road, we are for sure ended in extreme disease, a huge healthcare crisis. Look, the GDP is going up because the number of hospitals are increasing. But is the GDP accounting for the health of the people or the health of the
The lost
economy?
man hours are nothing nobody's talking about.
Exactly. So this is a problem. We have to realize this is a problem. What we are consuming is not food. It is some dead, sedated, radiated version of.
Is it easy to recognize whether something has undergone this? Like, can I look at a potato and say, hey, I should not be eating this potato?
Very difficult. But if you eat the potato and you're still hungry, something's wrong.
Okay.
So
For me-
bad food doesn't satiate you.
Okay, we'll get to Sri Lanka, but for example, when I used to be in school and the school is over, we come out, there's a person selling guavas. Those guavas used to be this tiny. Now if I go outside a school and I see guavas the size of a watermelon. Yeah.
1 kg guavas, dude.
Yeah.
And all water and horrible, like
And I'm like,
tasteless.
how did guavas grow so big suddenly in 10 years or
freaky,
20
man.
years?
It's freaky. These scientists getting into the whole nature scene is unpalatable to me.
Yeah.
And
So I can visually say if the guava is that big,
I don't want to touch it,
want
right?
to eat
Yeah,
it,
you don't
right?
want to eat it. Like
I
some
want
things.
my tiny desi
Yeah,
guava.
yeah. Some things are no-brainers.
Yeah.
Having said that, nature has its own mutations, and there are ways to do this appropriately, naturally also.
Okay.
So mutation is a very natural thing in nature, and a random mutation happens. And if you happen to catch it and propagate it, it's perfectly.
Okay, we will waver
natural.
off. So let's get back to the question, and we'll come back to this later.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
I want to keep you on track.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about this is a problem and it needs to change. Sri Lankan government thought that this is a problem. Let's change it. The problem is that if you're a drunk person who's used to have 10 drinks a day, and I suddenly cut your alcohol intake and ask you to give a speech in front of 40,000 people in the Indian Parliament, can you do it? That's exactly what Sri Lanka did. Okay, so whenever you're rehabilitating a drug addict and bringing him back to normal life. There is a 12-step program, right? So you have to create that transition plan to do it. I have a lot of my students, they have farms that are 100 acres, 200 acres, and they're like, we've been practicing chemical modern farming for a while and we want to transition to natural farming. I always tell them, go 10% 2 years. So 90% continue your schedule, 10% incremental changes in your schedule every year. If there is a pest attack, your life depends on it, spray a pesticide. It's okay. You've been spraying it for the last 25 years, spray now, but spray as much as is needed, right? Slowly weather down the modern techniques, come back to a natural technique, and hopefully in the next 8 to 10 years, you will have a completely organic farm. Number one. Number two, unless the entire village decides to do it, if everyone around you are spraying pesticides with planes and stuff like that, then you as a small pocket farmer can't do much. So it has to be a village level decision. It has to be a collective decision, and there have to be financial subsidies and substitutes ready in case this fails. So the problem has to be solved like an adult. You cannot just ban imports to all chemical pesticides and fertilizers overnight and expect the country to deliver the same amount of food. It's not going to happen. So that was the Sri Lanka problem.
But Sikkim seems to be on a success story with organic
100%.
farming. It's fully organic. Am I correct when I say that? Is Sikkim as a state fully organic now?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure, but I am telling you my own, it's my life experience that if you leave the soil be and if you plant at the right time with the right rhythm of nature, you can pretty much match or outdo any yield. And I'm telling you, why is yield the only factor for success? How many kgs of wheat? Why is that important? If half a kg of organic wheat can satiate you more than 2 kgs of inorganic wheat, then yield is not the best indicator, right? It's the nutritional density that we need
That's
to measure.
true, but I think then we are going against the operational rules of the world in that sense. Because more yield is more commerce, and I want you to eat more and more and things like that. Isn't that how the capitalistic world behaves?
That's a huge problem, man.
Yeah.
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 I think capitalism, anyway.
So actually, because we're talking about capitalism, my worldview of capitalism now is that if you can make an idea capitalistic, it will see success. So why not make natural farming the epitome of capitalism? What is the idea that makes it so capitalistic that everybody wants to make it work? So in some way, you either work from the top, like it becomes a rule of the state that is the way to do it, or you make it so successful monetarily, philosophically, aspirationally that everybody wants to do it. That's how all brands work. So what's the brand natural farming look like in a modern capitalistic world? Let's not be preachy about it because it
No,
only
I'll be
serves...
absolute. I mean, I'll stick to the basics and correct my concepts if I'm wrong. So we are talking about economy and government.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Economy basically works on free market economics.
Correct.
If there is demand, supply will cater.
Exactly.
And demand and supply will settle at a certain price, which is the free market equilibrium. Right? So this is economics 101. Okay. Government's job is to clean up the shit that this economics creates.
Right.
Okay. This has historically been the case.
Right.
Okay. That the money makers have continued to make money till the time the problem has gotten so serious that someone's dying, cancer is happening, and then suddenly the government is like, wait, you gotta like stop or like push back a little, stop dumping in the river, stop doing this. So to answer your question, capitalism, we have to understand any value comes from the extraction of a natural resource. Think about it. I challenge you to tell me one thing that generates money without exploiting a natural resource.
None.
None. So we have to understand that whenever money is made, forget excess of money, whenever money is made, some natural resource is being exploited.
Yes.
Okay? Because we've gone beyond the point of manpower. We have gone beyond the point of horsepower. Fossil fuels are so dense in calories and calorific value, it is impossible to measure. Right? I came here in a rickshaw. Okay, I have deforested half an acre by simply my act of coming here by a rickshaw. Okay, so this is our impact on the world. We have not consumed like we have ever consumed before in the last 100 years. Okay, so it's catastrophic what we are doing right now. When you pose a challenge of natural farming becoming truly capitalistic, it cannot happen in the structure of capitalism as we know it today.
True.
Okay.
It will need some policy change. It will need some behavior change.
No, man, it will need a structural change. You have to decentralize.
Okay.
And capitalism feeds off centralization.
Okay. Let me try and articulate my...
Give me the framework of capitalism.
I'll tell you.
And then I will.
So let's not work on the traditional definition of capitalism because it will take the conversation in a very...
preachy zone.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. Okay. I love my car, which is a Tata Nano. Okay. I mean, we have a larger car, but I love moving in a Nano in a city like Pune because extremely practical. It has several shortcomings. You can complain about so many things, but it's a car that suits the area that I move in. And I need a roof on my head. That's why I use that. Otherwise, I would move on a scooter. And if I was not going to be drenched in perspiration, I would probably prefer a cycle.
Yeah.
Okay? Establish the premise. Why the Nano is great for me is because I'm always alone and I have goods to carry. If I see the roads around me, the aspiration is to buy the biggest SUV I can afford to buy.
That's capitalism, right?
Right? So if there was a way, and Tata Nano is a classic example of having failed at creating an aspirational vehicle which was small. If at all the world moves in a way wherein small cars become aspirational. So what's an aspirational small car? That more and more people, so we will not eradicate cars is the premise we establish and agree on.
We've crossed that line.
Yeah, we crossed that line. So what if, and I'm thinking very, it's an imaginary world wherein smaller cars become more desired than larger diesel guzzlers for the city travel.
This is my life's work, man.
Yeah.
I think now we are talking solutions.
Yes. So
Right?
I would not want to be on an imaginary platform being preachy. I want to say, let's human-centered design.
Come on, let's do it. So,
Make-
lifestyle contraction, right? Actually, what I'm doing is not permaculture, it's lifestyle design. Okay? And I'm trying to design a way of life that's filled with city pleasures, but in a rural context that's self sustainable.
Okay.
Okay? Where clean air, water is given the value that it deserves. And it's not like harnessed. We are in Pune right now. It's horrible, man. Like, I get a cough and a cold every time I come to Pune. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I think we have to recognize that we have crossed the line in terms of comfort. We have to somewhere create a bottom up and top down, like we have to put pressure on the government to push policies that are anti-economic interest, but that have the best interests of the citizens in their mind. Okay, so how do I put this? Mobility is the problem we are solving. Okay, not GDP.
No.
Okay, when we take an end-use approach to things, okay, we can solve problems very smartly even in a city context. If I want to dry my clothes, I don't need a dryer. I need sunshine and I need a clothesline, right? Because sunlight is free and sunlight can dry clothes. A dryer requires electricity. So how do you take an end-use approach, do a fundamental needs analysis for the city, and then solve those problems with the smartest way, in the smartest way possible, involving community? But for this, the only problem, Pushkar, is two things. Okay, one is the scale at which this problem exists.
Yes.
The scale is a big issue to solve. Okay, and the second is the long-term versus short-term issue that's happening. So the governance is for 5 years.
Yes.
Okay, why will he look at ocean acidification events that happen over 60 years that will eventually ruin the life of our kids? Why will a politician today bother about that? How do we put a system in place that holds him responsible for
20 years down
some
the line.
island drowning 20 years down the line? How do we create those kind of reward
funny
structures?
that you mentioned this. So let's assume our ancient practices were really good. They were very permaculture oriented, very natural living oriented, and modernization came and our society has gone through its change and evolution.
Yeah.
I think we are very, very well poised right now to, there's a larger voice today which is saying, let's go back to traditional practices. The reason I'm saying this is based on what I'm seeing people trying to do. A lot of people are now, thanks to certain influencers, a lot of people have started reading food labels on processed foods. So awareness of different kinds is coming, and the awareness to go towards natural living is probably at its best in the last 40, 50 years perhaps.
I'd agree. Yeah.
If we want to make a big change, I think tapping the youngest generation is the best way to do that, because then we train a generation. We are not hand-picking individuals, right? Japanese schools have agriculture as a topic in their primary and secondary subjects. Everybody learns how to grow a vegetable garden there. What would you want to teach really young kids?
Yeah, that's a very fundamental question. And I'm doing this work on the farm already. See, the thing is, it's really a question of identity. Okay? If I identify myself as a being that has to tame nature in order to lead a rich life, then that's the direction in which the society is going today. But if as a kid I'm conditioned that this plant, this tree, this soil, this wind is me, myself, it's part of me as an identity, then there is no question of me causing harm to it, right? So to that level we have to work. Now how do we get there? Veggie garden is a beautiful entry point. Okay, what we do is we make seed balls, we make cob, which is a mixture of sand, clay, and straw, and we get them comfortable going into soil and getting their hands dirty. These are the privileges of our childhood, which are completely, unfortunately, misperceived by children, and COVID didn't do any good for this.
Absolutely.
Right? Like every time there's a small particle of dirt on a kid's hand, the first word that comes is chi, sanitizer kidhar hai, right? So the difference between soil that is nourishing and life giving to dirt which is dirty and polluting and filled with germs, when did this tragedy happen, needs to be investigated, it needs to be intervened with, and this intervention needs to be done sensitively. It needs to be done culturally. In Marathi there's a beautiful word for it, it's called sanskar. And it just cannot be done by schools, it cannot be done just by parents, it should be done holistically by society, by schools, by parents, collectively. Only then will it create lasting change. Okay? To answer your question specifically, it is an absolute must that children be exposed, forget to farming, to nature first. Okay? Every kid, at least once a month, must go in some natural habitat. This is a must. It's a non-negotiable. If you're in Pune, if you're in Mumbai, go to RA, go to the Kaneri Caves, go to Vada, see the arid landscape. RA has a beautiful, thriving jungle still. Come to Lonavala, go to Ambi Valley, go to these beautiful places, do treks. Getting into nature once a month is non-negotiable. Forget all the techniques, forget everything else. Children are remarkably perceptive. Okay? If you don't tell the child any stories and you simply leave the child in the forest, the child can live there. It's not like you and me, 7 o'clock sunset and now what to do, right? The child can take a rock, imagine it to be a bird and play with it for hours together. Instead, we have given them screens. So that's the tragedy, you know. So they need to be exposed to nature first and foremost. After that, we need to have a very formal theory and practical curriculum. Pedagogists need to come together. They need to design based on the absorption capability of, I don't know, education is a very rich field. I don't want to get into it, but I'm saying that everyone should know how to grow their own food. Everyone should know how to build their own home. Everyone should know how to make their own clothes to protect themselves. The basics of roti, kapda, makan, everyone should be self-sufficient in it. These are the absolute basics that give you a sense of being a human on this earth, and I think they are absolutely non-negotiable. So parents should enforce this. Schools should have this in their curriculum. The government should mandate this. And there are so many different foundational things that will come out of this, you know. So if you have, surprisingly, Jiddu Krishnamurthy is a very renowned intellectual and thinker, and he runs a school called Rushi Valley. And they learnt from nature. And there is a common thread that I've observed in all Rishi Valley Sholai school students. Okay? They are brilliant. chief of staff at Flipkart, you name it. They have the best positions in corporate world today, but they are so sound and founded in their confidence. I mean, if you converse with them, they are extremely stable, and that stability, the capability to take pressure, to absorb impact, comes from a deep foundation of nature education. So it does way more things than just learning how to grow a plant and how to grow your own food. I think it's a deep personality development tool that we are completely missing.
Since you have started this 3 years ago, how are people around you? Have they changed practices? Are they coming and asking you for advice? What's the change in your neighborhood?
Now it's happening. So this is very interesting. I am actually in something called as a gallery forest. Okay. So I have an escarpment above me, which is forest. I have a valley below me, which is forest. And I am in a terrace in the middle where all the nutrient stops and we can farm there. Traditionally, huge use of pesticides. Kids are not allowed. So PP suits while strawberry growing. Kids are not allowed to go in the farm after pesticide sprays because people are falling sick. All these kinds of things are happening. I come and I change the tillage technique. I mulch naturally using straw. I don't use plastic. I make a concoction or a potion using certain local ingredients. Some people call it Jivamrut. It's got different names. I use a different recipe, whatever. But it's essentially the same thing. And I always have like barrels at different pieces on my farm. Those barrels are being stirred. This live sort of inoculation of soil life from the local region is being pumped into my soil. And that's doing the tilling for me. That's doing the NPK and micronutrient fulfillment for me. That's doing everything for me. Now my plants are looking happier year after year after. First year was a disaster, attacked by pests because all others were spraying pesticides. Where do the pests go? Oh, this guy is juicy. No pesticide, attack. Okay, so that happened first year. Second year, plants got stronger. Third year, my plants are so strong that during a 40 to 50% mortality rate in nearby farms, not one plant died on my farm. I'm talking about strawberry, pure. I'm getting into technical now. So people are seeing this. The mama who works on the farm with me, who helps me farming, he is seeing it. He knows all the recipes and everything. All these recipes go through these networks into the village. He goes into the village, tells his friends, boss, he is doing this. This is the ratio and this is the result. Suddenly I'm seeing barrels outside everyone's farm. Everyone's stirring 3 times a day, and it gives me immense joy, man. It gives me immense joy. Like the amount of honeybees in our region has increased because pesticide use has reduced. The Karvi honey that I'm selling this year is literally from our valley. And the fact that we could harvest so much honey is testament that the ecology is coming back.
Right.
Bird species on my farm have tripled. We have now 48 to 49 identified species on the farm. Reptiles have increased, insects have increased. So the biodiversity is coming back, not just on my farm, but in the entire region. Of course, people are still using. See, it is a life and death situation for them. Okay, if they invest whatever lakh rupees in setting up the strawberry farm, they have to make sure that they survive. So that level of paranoia will always be there. But slowly and surely, it's changing. And I'm trying to solve this problem from many perspectives. So I'm trying to give them financial aid also.
Okay.
Next year, I'm getting together, like
Right.
you are a friend. There are so many other friends like us for whom a small token amount of money is not a big deal. Okay. If we pool together such money and we go and tell the village, listen, we will buy every berry you grow as long as you grow it the right way. And we'll buy it at farm gate. Assured sale. Farmer is disconnected from the market economy. He is not pushed by market forces to sell and make money. He knows he is getting 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 rupees at the end of the month. Why will he do stupid things?
You talked about honey, Karvi honey. Many people will not know what is Karvi honey. So it's one of your 6 revenue streams you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think when we have asked people around, saying a person of such and such background is coming on our podcast, and I often do that before we go on record with the person. I want to see what's the cynicism about the topic in the people's mind. I also want to know what do they think about the topic. So 2 things we answered. The first thing about, is this an elitist thing, and we have great answers.
Definitely
there.
not.
The
Yeah.
second is, you've come from a very high paying past life to a life of self-sustenance right now. So people had questions about how is he living now, and you told the 6 revenue streams. So tell us about what are these products that you're making on your farm, because I would love people to know what you're making so that they go and actually try those out.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So we grow everything. We grow strawberries. We make preserves and jams out of them. We sell them. We keep honey. And I'm calling it Karvi honey because Karvi was in bloom and the bees brought the nectar from Karvi, and that's in the honey right now.
So
But
tell us what is special about Karvi.
Karvi is this beautiful plant that blossoms. So it finishes its life cycle once in 7 or 8 years. And it just blossoms once a decade. So it's an honor and a privilege for you to watch a Karvi bloom. I think every human being, as soon as you realize the Karvi is blooming, you must go and get a glimpse of it. It's the most magnificent thing because the entire valley goes purple.
Mountainside turns purple blue.
Completely purple. It's extremely fragrant. Very few people have actually, if you pluck a flower when it's abundant, not just when one flower is remaining, by the way, but when it's abundant, pluck a flower or a pod, just break it a little, and it's one of the most divine, subtle scents, and the whole forest smells of that. And obviously, these bees will go and they will collect nectar and do the return service of pollination, and we collect that honey. But we essentially collect wild forest honey throughout the year. So whatever is blooming in the forests of Mahabaleshwar, it's
So you get
Geda, it's
Karvi honey
Anjani.
once every 10 years.
Once every 10 years. That's how rare it is, man. Extremely medicinal, beautiful floral note to it. Yeah.
Please
enjoy
continue about the other produce, but I wanted you to
Karvi
explain
is
what is
amazing. We do strawberry preserves. Right now we are growing a lot of food, which we usually consume on the farm, on farm tours. And so if you come to one of our farm tours, you will definitely have at least 2 things which are directly from the farm. The salad definitely is from the farm, and one sabji is from the farm. The dal usually is bought and something else. But most of the 60 to 70% of the plate is from the farm. We make handcrafted soaps, all natural ingredients, 100% vegan. And we do a lot of these. We source bamboo from Northeast and we sell bamboo toothbrushes. All these other products are basically pushing you to think about end of life. Use things that go back to the earth really quickly. Use things that don't pollute the earth when they go down the drain. Most of the shampoos, most of the soaps we use today, once they are going to our rivers, right? They go through the drainage pipe is dumping everything into the river. The river is getting polluted and that circles back into our food and our oceans, and it basically ultimately pollutes us. So whatever you consume, leave the least amount of trace back is the philosophy on which we operate. Neelandmomo.com has most of the products. There's no rocket science to it. But I think through Neel and Momo, I am also propagating a lifestyle, right? And the lifestyle is this, that as much as possible, become self-reliant. I will teach you how to make your own soap. If you are living in a beautiful environment with clean water, you don't need soap. Just washing yourself with water is good enough. You don't even need anything. And you can lead a really rich, fulfilled life. You just mentioned that I had a high-paying job and I was in the city and I left everything and I went to a village. I'll tell you, my quality of life, the quality of my health has increased manyfold.
Let me paint a doomsday picture to you. A doomsday according to me. A lot of people are going to listen to you on this podcast. and they are going to probably, the right kind of folks will definitely align their thoughts around this, and they may start imagining a life of buying a farm. Now, do we have enough farms left for people to go by and settle down on? And if a sizable chunk of the urban population decides to go on a track you have been, what does the future look like to you?
I love it. So, first of all, don't buy it, rent it. Okay. Before you jump and take the plunge of buying, because that's another podcast. How to buy a piece of land, and what are the ways you can get stuck in it. So, let's not get there. But this is the future I envision. And it's not dystopian at all. It's not doomsday at all. I think the world as I see it is a collective of self-sufficient villages with pack sizes not more than 100. Community sufficiency is possible. Self-sufficiency is not possible. I cannot grow my timber and my fuel and my carbohydrates and my proteins and everything and become a cobbler and become a carpenter and a welder or whatever. So it has to be a community of varied skill sets, perfectly aligned, living as a tribe, where you're alive as a human, you're respected as a human, completely self-sufficient in that geography. Okay? With all kinds of unique diversity based on the region where you are. And that's how the world of the future is going to be. I think the first rearrangement is going to happen around water. Now I'm talking like a prophet, okay? So I'll be careful and guarded. Don't take my word on this. But I think we are running out of water. And this dream of somewhere that 100, 200, 500 kilometer pipeline is piping some water to us, the energy equation is going to change very fast. And we are going to have to go back to the ways of the old. Okay? Mula and Mutha don't flow through Pune. Pune was settled along the banks of Mula and Mutha. There's a fundamental difference in perspective there. Human settlements were around water. Water didn't go through human settlements. This arrogance of being a human being has to shift. So we are going to go back to sources of potable water. Okay? These cities will have to be dismantled. While that sounds dystopian, I think it's a reset. We will start regarding these natural resources as deities again. And they will rise up to the level of gods, and we will worship them because they will be so rare and life-giving. And the whole system will reset. And it will reset in smaller packs. Because it's impossible to organize at the scale at which we are organizing without being extractive. I think we have pushed the boundary a little too much. I think we need to come back to smaller, decentralized, autonomous units of communities operating on their own free will, guided by the principles of ecology. Okay. This is the future.
So my interest in your philosophy is really peaked up. I want to put my farm to good use, and I hope that if I start doing some of these practices, even if I start staying there for 2 more days in a week than what I've been doing, my activity will make the farm a much better place to go there.
100%.
If I come to your workshop, how does the workshop look like? Can you break it down for us? What will be my takeaways from the workshop in terms of direct implementable actions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So by the way, the next workshop is on 16th of Jan.
Yes.
It's a shameless plug, but I'm plugging it here.
Yes. I think we need to be shameless if we want to get the message across these days, isn't it?
So it's on 16th of Jan, and it's an initiation into this world. So it's a very small, unfortunately. So this whole thing of permaculture is actually a minimum 14-day course, residential course, where you come, you sit, you deep dive into every detail, water, soil, patterns, ecology, design, and you go step by step by step. What I have attempted to do is crystallize it into smaller modules. Okay. Now it's more like an unconference. Okay. The whole cohort gets together, and the first day we do an icebreaker, and we get together a list of expectations that the batch has, because every batch is very different. Okay, there might be someone who has 50 acres already, and there might be someone who has no clue about what permaculture is all about, but just is interested in leading a better, more aligned life. Okay, so we take all these things on the board. Okay, we will club them into modules of what are the learning objectives of this workshop. Okay, in front of the entire batch, we will design a 2-day curriculum. The curriculum changes based on every batch. Okay, so there are people who are absolutely clueless, polluting rampantly, and they have no clue that they think we are not the problem, someone else is the problem. So then I have to go from the grassroots, scare them first, bring them to reality that this is your carbon footprint, and then slowly transform into. So we don't go too much into design. But we've had batches where people have had farms and they wanted to transition from chemical based farming to sustainable living. So we will design this module for you, but the basics what you will get are the attitudinal principles and ethics of permaculture. So the mindset and the framework will be given to you. With this framework, you can design a farm, you can design a balcony, you can design your office ka HR team, you can redesign your house furniture, you can take any life decision based on these fundamental, it's basically first principles thinking. So that approach you will be given on day 1. And day 2 is completely flexible. But what we do is we learn how to build soil from the basics. We learn how to plant a tree the right way. We learn how to design on the farm, how to think about design. So how to connect the elements, how to make the element mind map, and then how to physically place elements on your farm, which is going to be interesting to you basically. So the first questions someone has on the farm is, okay, I've taken a farm, where do I build my house, right? There's a deep thinking behind where to build your house on the farm, and it's an it depends question again, because every farm is different. What aspect you have, where the wind blows, where your cliff is, where your valley is, different things, will determine these things. So we teach you what to consider, when to consider, how to do a socio-economic survey with your neighbors, how to do a flora-fauna survey, and basically how to place elements on the map. This much we can do in 2 days. But there is a much deeper study that needs to be done. I leave you with a huge bank of resources that helped me go deeper in this. I give you a list of books that you can buy immediately. And then, a lot of people have shown interest in the full 14-day thing. But I'm not yet ready to do such an intense program on the farm right now. Accommodation, logistics, there are so many things that go into it. But in these 4 days, you will certainly get a slice. So while I'm doing all this Gyan Buzz, nature is doing her thing. You are in Mahabaleshwar, drinking the beautiful mineral water from the stream. I don't filter it at all. You're eating food from my farm. Naturally, I ask you to take your shoes off. We sit under an old tree. We spoke about vibration and nadis. I feel that is the energy center of my farm, which is where all the energy is concentrated. It's an old umber tree, wild fig tree. And under that, we have sort of made a dung floor, and I have bamboos and thatched roof. That's it. That's your classroom. And we learn with bird noise and the gentle breeze, and yeah, it's a very...
You make it sound very appealing.
it's I think it's a good sort of, it's a small capsule, and it's just a commitment of
If
3
not
days.
anything else, I'm pretty sure it's a great holiday in nature in Mahabaleshwar. So
If nothing, you'll go back healthier, man. If you don't understand anything in the workshop, you'll go back healthier.
So the next workshop in permaculture, or introduction to permaculture, at Neil and Momo Farms is on 16th of Jan 2025. It's a great way to begin a 2025 with at Neil and Momo Farms.
I agree.
Thank you so much for joining us, Swapnil.
Cheers,
I
man.
wish the world becomes a much greener place, and a place that you imagine it to be. We all love that kind of an imagination for the world that we are going to populate. Thank you so much for joining us on 42 Talks.
This was so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah.